Incredible discovery. Billionaire's heartwarming encounter with a black girl caring for his disabled brother. Samuel Carter, a billionaire in his prime, lived in a world of glass and steel, held aloft by an empire of technology and wealth. But beneath the surface of opulence lay hollowness, a ghost of childhood dances with shadows of unmet expectations. Wealth had been the answer to everything in his family except love. On a quiet evening, escaping the confines of his sprawling Atlanta mansion, Samuel's heart raced with an unsettling urge for peace. He took to the streets, where the hum of his luxury car clashed with a deep-seated longing for simpler times. As he drove through his suburban neighborhood, something drew him toward a modest community center. Laughter spilled from within, echoing against the cold walls of his preoccupation. Samuel parked and hesitated before pushing open the door, compelled by sounds of joy he hadn't felt in years. Upon entering, he found himself captivated by a small figure, a fierce 12-year-old girl, Zara, gracefully juggling homework while caring for her younger brother confined to a wheelchair. The sight pierced his heart, a sharp reminder of a life abandoned in the pursuit of success. Zara's bright eyes, filled with dreams yet shadowed by adversity, ignited a spark in him. For a split second, he questioned everything he stood for. This child had ambitions of becoming a doctor, yet her reality was marred by the societal expectations that seemed insurmountable. Samuel watched her, feeling the weight of his privilege, the heavy realization that his golden life stifled her potential with the weight of disparity. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As weeks passed, a bond slowly blossomed. Zara confided in Samuel about her dreams, a fire in her voice dimmed only by the burden of financial struggles. Each conversation unveiled layers of his own heart, guilt mixed with admiration. His internal tug-of-war escalated as the prospect of helping her sparked a growing moral dilemma. The corporation he ran prided itself on innovation yet was oblivious to the inequalities it perpetuated. Just as he built the courage to change the course of both their lives, a phone call shattered his growing resolve. Zara's brother had fallen ill, their family was in dire need, scrambling for resources that seemed bleak. Anxiety took hold. He felt his stomach churn as Zara's face appeared in his mind, vibrant, yet now clouded with worry. Watching her strength falter in the face of such hardship, he confronted his own feelings of inadequacy, layered over the numbing wealth he had come to despise. The urgency of her situation brought sharp clarity to Samuel's world, a reckoning he could no longer ignore. Could he risk his status to fight for justice as Zara wrestled with her choices, the loyalty to family versus the burning desire to soar beyond current realities? As the images of his own success played back in his mind, the chasm between them widened. Moments of truth loomed. He knew now that resolving the inequalities around him would not be a smooth path. Standing at the precipice of a decision, Samuel felt his heart hammer as the choice crystallized in his mind. Should he prioritize his empire or invest in a true legacy, one that might redeem his journey and empower Zara? The stakes had never felt higher, and every moment of delay was filled with the weight of their shared futures, inching closer to a point of no return. The decision weighed heavily on Samuel's mind, pressing down with the force of 1,000 expectations. He paced the sleek marble floor of his luxurious office, a realm of power and prestige that now felt suffocating. The walls loomed, adorned with accolades reflecting a life built on the back of ambition, each award a reminder of a path he had chosen for himself, blind to the ramifications that rippled beyond his personal gain. Zara's face, etched with determination yet clouded by familial burdens, consumed his thoughts. In her, he saw the potential of countless others crushed under the weight of circumstance. It was a hard pill to swallow. Did he possess the courage to shatter the confines of his own existence to uplift another? The price of his inaction gnawed at his conscience, a relentless reminder that stagnation was complicity. His phone buzzed, disrupting his spiraling thoughts. A quick glance confirmed it was Zara, just moments away from their next meeting. She was relying on him, hoping to find in him a champion, yet here he was, paralyzed by the enormity of what he might have to sacrifice. He clutched the device, debating whether to answer. What could he possibly tell her? That he was wrestling with his own demons, entrenched in a lifestyle that bred inequality? With a deep breath, he decided to take the call, gauging his next move to help both Zara and himself find the clarity they needed. "Hello, Zara," he greeted, attempting to sound composed despite the turmoil roiling within him. "Mr. Carter. I'm glad you picked up. I wanted to tell you about some resources I found, maybe a way to help my brother." She paused, then added more quietly, "and my dreams." Samuel leaned against his desk, letting her words siphon away his apprehension. Zara had a way of slicing through his uncertainties with such fierce clarity. "What have you discovered?" He prodded, intrigued how her tenacity outweighed her despair. "There's a local health initiative. They provide support for families with disabled children, but the funding is slim. They need someone with influence to help get the word out." Influence. The very currency that had shaped his life, and now it beckoned to be spent with purpose. The gears in his mind began to shift, realizing that this could be his first step toward changing the way he measured success, one that didn't solely reflect wealth but rather impact. "Zara, what if I could help you promote this initiative?" he suggested, a spark igniting within him. "We could raise awareness and funds, maybe even leverage my company's resources to support it." A sigh of relief escaped her lips. "You mean it? That would change everything. But, would it be okay for you? I don't want to impose." It was a double-edged sword. Just as he considered the impact of his gesture, the reality of potential backlash hit him. He could be risking his empire for something outside his cushioned existence. Would his board of directors see it as a humanitarian effort, or a foolish gamble that jeopardized their profits? Yet when he looked inward, he realized what he truly sought was authenticity. "I'm certain about this, Zara. It's time to recalibrate how I do business." They talked for an hour, strategies swirling between them like raindrops on a window, the world outside fading into the background. He felt himself drawn deeper into Zara's vision, each word she spoke awakening parts of his soul he thought he had lost forever. As their conversation drew to a close, Samuel found both determination and trepidation in equal measure. Somehow, by allying with Zara, he was stepping towards something much larger than himself. The stakes were unfathomably higher than they had ever been. Facing mounting pressure from his board and an ever-watchful public, he understood the battle to redefine his legacy had only just begun, but as he hung up, adrenaline coursed through him. The moment of truth was imminent. He had to confront the fiends in his mind, the apprehension, the fear of losing everything he had built. He was changing the equation, but would it lead to freedom, or to a pit of despair? The stirring in his gut intensified. "Tomorrow, I face them," he whispered to himself, determination shifting to resolve. The time had come to confront the true essence of life, beyond the digits on a balance sheet, beyond the motives of expediency. Tonight, he would prepare, for the price of change might be higher than he ever anticipated. The sunlight streamed through the high-rise windows, casting long shadows across the meticulously organized chaos of Samuel's office. He stared at the stacks of paperwork waiting for his attention: proposals, quarterly reviews, impending deadlines, each one a remnant of the structure he had built around himself. But now, the significance of those tasks felt trivial against the pulsating urgency of his commitment to Zara and her cause. As he paced the floor once more, planning consumed his every thought. Mapping out a strategy for promoting the health initiative had transformed his anxiety into a palpable energy. He envisioned press releases, social media campaigns, and partnership meetings, each one a brick in the foundation of a legacy he now longed to leave. But with every step, he felt the weight of the corporate world clawing at his very essence. The financial giants he had once revered now seemed shackled to an outdated model of success. Samuel knew he had to present this new direction to the board with clarity and conviction. Yet, visions of them scoffing at his intentions clouded his mind. He recalled their faces, stone-cold executives more focused on profit margins than people. Would they see him as an ally or a fool? The fear of ridicule danced on the periphery of his thoughts, threatening to pull him back into the safety of his insulated life. But what terrified him even more was the prospect of abandoning Zara. In their conversations, he had glimpsed the impact they could make together. Each day, she shared higher dreams, invigorating his desire for purpose. Samuel was no longer just optimizing for profitability, a new drive surged within him, the pursuit of meaningful change. He reached for his phone once more, scrolling through messages from Zara, remnants of their earlier excitement. Each one felt like a tether connecting him to a world outside the sterile confines of profit-driven motivations. Inspiration struck like a bolt of lightning as he drafted a message of reassurance, confirming readiness for their meeting the following day. It felt like an awakening. He was no longer simply a company president but a burgeoning advocate. But his resolve was put to the test when he received an unexpected call from the chairman, Mr. Landon. Samuel's heart raced, knowing this conversation could derail everything. "Samuel, have you thought about our upcoming strategies? The quarterly projections don't look good," Mr. Landon stated, authoritative and unwavering. "Yes, I have, and they could actually benefit from a new direction. Let us not divert our focus here. We need to tighten our belts, not expand our outreach into community initiatives," Mr. Landon interjected, voice flat with disinterest. Bitterness bubbled up in Samuel's throat. Just as he envisioned breaking from the chains of convention, the very weight of his world threatened to close in on him. As he hung up, guilt clawed at his insides. Was he failing his own business? But that thought quickly transformed into determination. He could no longer adhere to a model that privileged numbers over people. If he could shift even a fraction of that corporate mindset, then perhaps the change he sought was genuinely possible. He spent the evening meticulously assembling documents. Metrics and analytics seeped into his preparations, ensuring he could appeal to their cold logic while introducing a shift towards a more compassionate vision. Crafting his argument became more than mere words. It was a recalibration of his identity. Eventually, sleep eluded him. He lay in bed, replaying conversations with Zara, contemplating the cascade of decisions that would mark his tomorrow. There was no turning back now. He was charting a course that could inspire his company to engage in something authentically impactful. With dawn just breaking, Samuel rose, a sense of renewed purpose enveloping him. Tomorrow, he would not only face his board, he would face it with the strength of conviction, the kind he had almost lost in the noise of ambition. As he steeled himself for what lay ahead, a realization struck. While he had always prided himself on his strategic prowess, this was a different game entirely. He wasn't just fighting for financial gains but for something much deeper. The reckoning was at hand. Soon, he'd know what true courage meant. The moment of truth approached, and he wondered, would he truly be the champion that Zara and countless others deserved? Samuel arrived at the boardroom with a confidence he had not realized he could muster. The polished mahogany table loomed beneath fluorescent lights, reflecting the seriousness of the atmosphere. Each familiar face sat in silence, preparing to dissect his forthcoming proposal, and he felt a wave of vulnerability wash over him. Taking a deep breath, Samuel centered himself. It was time to bridge his dual worlds, the relentless pursuit of profit and the human connections that had recently reshaped his vision. He'd spent the night honing his presentation not just as a strategic pitch, but as a manifesto of what his company could and should be. With a nod, he initiated the meeting, the anxiety ebbing away as he spoke. "Thank you for gathering. I realize we are facing unique challenges this quarter, but I believe we have an opportunity to redefine our approach." He looked around, searching for a flicker of intrigue among the hardened executives. "Each of us wants what's best for this company," he continued. "But I propose that prioritizing community engagement isn't a distraction. It's South and Avenue for sustainable growth and innovation. We can integrate a health initiative that positions us as industry leaders while positively impacting our cities." He could see Mr. Landon's brows knitted in skepticism, a stone-faced sentinel against change. But Samuel pressed on, citing success stories of other businesses that embraced social responsibility, highlighting how their brand loyalty surged. As he spoke, something unexpected happened. Doubt transformed into excitement within him. This was no longer about dodging judgment, it was about creating a vision cohesive with his values. He reached into the depths of his own experiences, driven by conversations with Zara and the community she served. "How do you expect this to improve our numbers?" Mr. Landon interjected, his voice laced with sarcasm. "In the short term, it might not," Samuel admitted, refusing to shy away from the reality. "But investing in these initiatives fosters goodwill, a deeper connection with our customers, and believe it or not, a more motivated workforce. It's a long play, but it pays dividends. People are not just statistics, they are the heartbeat of this business." The room fell silent, the weight of his words lingering in the air. He could sense the tension rising, minds racing like wild horses on the brink of a stampede. Would they dismiss him entirely? Or was there a chance he could unearth their buried empathy? For a brief moment, Samuel wondered if he was alone in this fight. The seeds of doubt began to sprout within him, questioning his authority and decisions. But then he recalled Zara's passion, her belief in something beyond profit margins. Her unwavering dedication to be a change agent ignited a flicker of determination within him. "I'm not asking you to jump in blind. I'll lead the way. We can pilot this initiative on a small scale, measure its impact, and then adapt our strategies accordingly." Glancing around the table, he saw the gears of decision-making shifting slowly. Their expressions softened. Perhaps they were beginning to understand his urgency, or maybe they were just intrigued enough to hear more. "Let me present the next steps, the logistics, and how we can manage our investments without jeopardizing the bottom line," he finished, resolve hardening in his voice. As he moved to distribute his detailed plans, an unexpected realization settled in. For so long, he had allowed himself to be defined by their expectations, their skepticism. But here, today, he was carving out his own identity, one of purpose and unwavering conviction. Samuel concluded his pitch with a bold statement. "In challenging these norms, we can inspire others in our industry, reimagine success, and ultimately create a legacy that matters." In that moment, Samuel felt the internal barriers constricting him gradually dissipate, replaced with an invigorating energy born from authenticity. The meeting adjourned with smiles and nods, uncertainty mixed with a newfound curiosity. As he stepped out of the boardroom, he knew the battle was only just beginning. The stakes were higher than he had anticipated, and he realized that he might be stirring the waters of not only his corporation but also the broader implications of what leadership could mean. But would he find enough allies among his colleagues to help him navigate this tumultuous path, or would the pressures of tradition prove too strong? The clock was ticking, and the next challenge loomed on the horizon. A pivotal discussion with Zara awaited, one that could ignite a path to freedom or anchor him once and for all. Samuel stepped out of the boardroom, the sunlight streaming through the tall glass windows, throwing sharp patterns on the polished floors. His mind was racing, the adrenaline from his presentation still coursing through him. What had begun as an idea now felt like a robust mission, one he was determined to pursue, despite the doubts that still clung to him like shadows. That he knew he had taken a risk by pitching a community engagement initiative. The boardroom was a domain steeped in numbers and ledgers, where discussions were won and lost on financial forecasts rather than emotional appeals. Yet, he had felt a spark, a flicker of foresight that perhaps he wasn't just tossing ideas into the void. Each nod and murmur from his colleagues might be the start of shifting perspectives. However, incrementally, approaching his office, he hesitated as he passed Zara's workspace. The memory of their conversations flooded back, each word she had shared a backdrop to his performance just moments before. Creativity blended with compassion, she had urged him to envision a future beyond mere profit margins. Were her insights the key to galvanizing his colleagues? This question lingered, like a half-finished thought waiting for resolution. Once inside his office, he pulled out his laptop, intending to organize his thoughts while their energy was still fresh. Overall, the meeting had yielded encouraging signs, but he understood that true transformation required more than just a single pitch, it needed relentless advocacy. He began typecasting his next steps, vision-setting meetings, measurable goals, potential allies among the staff. Would it be effective to involve Zara directly in these initiatives? She possessed an authenticity that could genuinely captivate their more traditional colleagues. As the screen brightened, he became more focused, the rhythm of his typing a soothing backdrop to the spiraling whirlpool of ideas in his mind. However, an unsettling thought crept in. What if those who remained skeptical turned against him? Would they label him as naive for advocating what they deemed too risky, too soft? He felt the chill of potential isolation wrap around him. Would he be seen as a leader or just a vocal outlier? No, he whispered to himself, shaking his head. This is not just about me. He reached for his phone, contemplating how to approach Zara. Their dialogue often yielded fresh perspectives. Perhaps she might help refine his upcoming strategy and bolster his resolve. Before he could make the call, an email notification popped up. Mr. Landon had requested a follow-up meeting to discuss Samuel's pitch further. The request was both intimidating and exhilarating. It implied lingering interest but also scrutiny. What motive lurked beneath that formal request? Was it an opportunity to clarify and persuade or a chance to reinforce resistance? His heart raced with anticipation. This could be a defining moment, a chance to fortify his thoughts and challenge the status quo directly. With newfound determination, he began to outline key talking points for that meeting, aiming to counter objections while reinforcing the benefits of innovation rooted in community connection. Yet a nagging concern lay behind his focus. Would Mr. Landon remain an immovable barrier, or could Samuel appeal to his sense of responsibility as a leader in the industry? Throughout the process, Samuel had to confront a deeper worry. What was he willing to sacrifice to push his agenda forward, and who would he become in the process? He stepped back from his screen, breathing deeply. The stakes were high, his vision teetered on the precipice of acceptance or dismissal. The potential confrontation with Mr. Landon loomed ominously, representing a battleground not just for the initiative but for Samuel's evolving identity as a leader. As he gathered his notes, an idea flickered in the back of his mind, one inspired by Zara's teachings. Could he leverage their common interests, founding a dialogue based on respect instead of conflict? The clock was indeed ticking, and only one thought remained: this meeting could change everything. What if the next steps not only shaped his future but also fundamentally challenged how leadership was perceived within his company? In this high-stakes environment, Samuel was about to discover the limits of his conviction, setting the stage for a reckoning that could not be ignored. Samuel leaned over his desk, sorting through his notes for the third time, attempting to quell the rising tide of doubt that threatened to drown his resolve. Each bullet point he had written felt increasingly inadequate, too abstract to convey the urgency of his vision. His previous confidence had morphed into a relentless anxiety, the gravity of the upcoming meeting weighing heavily on his shoulders. Was he truly prepared to face Mr. Landon, the stalwart gatekeeper of tradition within the company? He paused to collect himself, taking a deep breath that expanded beyond the confines of his office. Outside, the world moved in a rhythm far removed from his current turmoil. He envisioned the bustling streets, the pedestrians rushing toward their destinations, moving, evolving, dynamic, while he wrestled with stagnation. What if he channeled that energy into the meeting? Clearly, coming with a passion-laden, steadfast approach could unveil a depth to his ideas that stark numbers simply wouldn't communicate. Flipping through a few slides he had prepared, he imagined their potential impact. The graphics were crisp, the statistics compelling, equally part of the proposal but lacking the heart behind the numbers. He needed more than that veneer of professionalism. He needed authenticity, something Zara had effortlessly exemplified in their discussions. She had shown him the power of personal connection, emotion entwined with intellect, and Samuel recognized that embracing that duality was essential for his approach. He quickly pulled open a blank document and began to conceptualize a narrative, a story that encapsulated the essence of his idea in relatable terms. It would not simply be about a project, but about a vision, a shared journey of transformation both for the company and for the community it served. As his fingers danced across the keyboard, he discovered a hidden talent for storytelling that he hadn't fully appreciated until now. Each word felt like a building block towards something larger, a bridge he could extend to his colleagues, but with the ink of inspiration, self-doubt crept in again. Who was he to think he could influence industry giants? The fear that his colleagues would dismiss him as an idealist gnawed at his confidence, a dark whisper that insisted he tread cautiously. What if I lead them astray? He mused internally. What if my vision leads to failure? Disregarding the noise, he busied himself again with the slides, knowing that mastering the content would lend him confidence. He recalled Zara's advice about grounding ideas in tangible outcomes. Highlighting potential financial benefits of community engagement, improved employee satisfaction, enhanced public relations could appeal to the board's sensibilities. Aligning emotional endeavors with financial acumen might be the key to building a more robust case, but would that be enough? The thought gnawed deeper, weaving itself into a moral dilemma. Would he be compromising his principles by solely focusing on profit? Samuel had embarked on this journey seeking to instill purpose, and here he was, contemplating capitalistic angles instead of sticking to his original vision of ethical growth. Rising from his chair, he took a moment to breathe in the atmosphere around him, the smell of fresh coffee mingling with the sharp tang of polished wood, the muted chatter from colleagues forging ahead with their own aspirations. This was his moment to step into the light, to own his voice, and perhaps, inspire those who remained skeptical. Glancing at his watch, urgency tinged with resolve coursed through him again. The meeting with Mr. Landon was fast approaching, and he couldn't delay any longer. He gathered his materials, running through his points one last time in his head. As he moved toward the door, another thought flickered in his mind. What if he framed the discussion not merely as a proposal but as an invitation to explore the undefined space between profitability and human connection? By presenting his vision as a collaborative journey, could he bridge the chasm between expectation and innovation? With every step toward the conference room, the question loomed larger. Soon, he would face the man whose approval could pivot his professional existence, but the real confrontation would be with himself, the leader he aspired to be, against the doubts lingering in his mind. Would he allow his passion to translate into power, or falter before the looming shadow of practicality? The moment was closing in, and Samuel was ready to finally confront the evolution of his purpose. Would he emerge adopted into a new leadership era, or find himself tucked back into the margins? As Samuel approached the conference room, his pulse quickened. The world around him seemed to blur, the plush carpet muffling the sounds of hurried footsteps and whispered conversations. He willed himself to focus, to shut out the distractions pulling at his concentration. Today was not just a presentation, it was the culmination of weeks of self-reflection and growth. Taking a deep breath, he paused outside the door. The potential impact of his ideas felt heavier now, like the weight of expectations pressing down on his shoulders. Yet, buried beneath that pressure was a flicker of excitement. He was ready to embody the leader he had envisioned during countless sleepless nights. Pushing the door open, he stepped into a room punctuated by the soft murmur of colleagues settling in. Mr. Landon sat at the head of the table, his ever-placid expression maintaining the status quo that made Samuel's skin itch. A quick scan of the room revealed a medley of curious stares mixed with doubt, perhaps even skepticism. Would they see the passion behind the data, or merely another flashy presentation destined to end with polite applause and little progress? "Good morning, everyone." Samuel's voice was steadier than he expected. "I'm here to discuss not just a project, but a vision for our future." The words hung heavily in the air, drawing the attention of the room. He flipped through his slides, grounding his narrative with both personal anecdotes and well-researched statistics. The room shifted with each story. He wove tales of innovative ventures that not only generated profit but also ignited a sense of purpose. He reinforced the idea of balancing profitability with genuine human connection, an approach he fervently believed could breathe new life into the company. Halfway through his pitch, he caught the unyielding gaze of Mr. Landon. An involuntary shiver ran down his spine. This was the man who had built his empire through traditional methods, who valued hard data more than heartfelt connections. Samuel felt the weight of their opposing philosophies. "Samuel," Mr. Landon interrupted, his voice clear and steady. "While your passion is commendable, how do you intend to translate this emotional investment into tangible outcomes? Can you assure us of profits?" A sinking feeling washed over Samuel. Had he overstepped? He recalled Zara's words about courage to stand firm in one's convictions despite pushback. Taking a breath, he leaned forward. Mr. Landon, what I'm proposing is not a gamble. It's an opportunity for us to redefine what success looks like. We can embed our core values into the very fabric of our operations and still thrive financially. The room stirred. Samuel sensed a mix of challenge and curiosity brewing. A glimmer of hope flickered within him. Had he struck a nerve? I'm asking you all to imagine a company where our employees not only feel fulfilled but are also ambassadors of our brand because they resonate with our mission. He paused, surveying their reactions. Some seemed intrigued, while others remained doubtful. Samuel knew this was his moment. This was where he needed to reclaim his narrative. What if every decision we made didn't just account for lines on a balance sheet, but rather embodied our values and traditions? Just as he thought he could rally the room, the atmosphere shifted. Mr. Landon leaned back in his chair, regarding him with a mixture of skepticism and what could be tantamount to interest. That sounds idyllic, Samuel, but how do we ensure that the ideal doesn't collapse under its own weight? The question struck, intensifying Samuel's resolve. We must set measurable goals that align with our mission, metrics that combine sentiment and hard data. We can track our journey while remaining true to our identity. The dialogue continued, probing deeper into the essence of his proposal, but as the meeting progressed, Samuel found himself standing at a precipice. The effectiveness of his ideas rested on his ability to preside over not just facts, but emotions, the very currency of genuine connection. He could feel the room pull against him, a tide of tradition threatening to overwhelm the innovation he envisioned. Yet alongside that weight, something else emerged, a determination he hadn't realized was latent. He was ready to fight for his ideas, even if that meant challenging the very foundation upon which the company had stood. The meeting came to a close, leaving questions hanging in the air like smoke in dim light. Samuel's heart raced as he sat down, suddenly hyper-aware of the potential confrontation brewing in the tension. Mr. Landon surely wasn't finished yet, and more than just his proposal was on the line. Would he be able to further develop his vision despite the looming challenge? With a storm of emotion coursing through him, fear, excitement, conviction, Samuel braced himself for the next round. The real test had only just begun. Samuel's thoughts raced as he processed the back and forth of the meeting. Sitting in his chair, surrounded by murmurs of discussion, he could feel the familiar knot of anxiety tightening in his chest. Each word exchanged had only intensified the unease, with Mr. Landon's steely demeanor overshadowing his hopes of inspiring change. He had felt the momentum shift. It was no longer just about the presentation but about the essence of who he was becoming. As colleagues began to file out of the room, Samuel lingered behind, deep in contemplation. He replayed Mr. Landon's skepticism over and over, like a haunting refrain. The question remained etched in his mind: how do we ensure that the ideal doesn't collapse under its own weight? That thought resonated within, igniting both a fear of inadequacy and a newfound drive to prove his vision's validity. He glanced around the conference room. Each stark white wall stood as a barrier to the vibrancy he sought to cultivate within the organization. What had once felt like walls suffocating creativity now appeared as canvases waiting to be painted with his ideas. Returning to his desk, he pulled out a notebook. As he scribbled notes, a realization dawned on him. He had to illustrate the why behind his vision with real-world examples, translating passion into data, success stories from companies that had embraced similar paradigms. Samuel needed to forge connections not just with concepts but with tangible, relatable narratives that could bridge the chasm between possibility and skepticism. Mapping out his approach, Samuel felt the thrill of a plan forming. He began sketching client profiles and case studies that highlighted emotional engagement leading to measured success, companies that had embraced mission-driven strategies. With each illustration, he could almost feel the weight on his shoulders begin to lift. He started to breathe a little easier, each thought forging pathways to a more compelling argument. In a flash, he recalled a seminar about storytelling in business. The speaker had emphasized the importance of weaving personal narratives into presentations. It was time for him to do just that. He picked up his phone and texted Zara, a mixture of nerves and determination buzzing through him. Can we meet? I need your insights on framing my vision better. It's not just about numbers, it's about connection. Almost immediately, a reply pinged back. Absolutely. I have some ideas that might help you hit the emotional angle harder. When? Today after work. Perfect. Let us make it happen. As the hours slid by, he felt each tick of the clock heighten his anticipation. In a mere meeting, he would confront his doubts, both internal and external, and collaborate to bolster his proposal. Samuel understood this meeting was not merely about enhancing his pitch, it was a primal act of reclamation, a stand against the traditional forces that threatened to disenfranchise his vision. That evening, the coffee shop buzzed with life. The rich aroma filled the air as Samuel and Zara exchanged ideas. With each insight she shared, he felt himself growing more confident, the swell of conviction rekindling his spirit. She helped him frame his narrative not merely as a proposal but as a story, a journey, filled with shared purpose and human connection. Yet, even amidst their shared excitement, a nagging thought lingered: was it enough? When Zara finished, he looked at her, an earnest spark in his eyes. What if it doesn't work? What if I push too hard? Zara leaned in, her tone serious. You need to remember that challenging the status quo is not just about the outcome. It's about the courage to stand for what you believe. And it's okay to fail, you'll learn and adapt. Her words resonated with him, echoing the lessons he had gleaned from his journey thus far. Samuel knew that only by embracing that inherent risk, the potential for not just success but growth, could he fulfill his mission. As they finally wrapped up, the weight of his vision felt lighter, transformed through collaboration and innovative thinking. Samuel walked out of the shop charged with purpose, his heart thundering with renewed vigor, but the moment he stepped outside, doubt crept back in. Could he truly make them see the future he envisioned? With a heart pulsing with resolve, he prepared to face Mr. Landon again. This time, he would come armed with a powerful narrative and a determination to inspire. Tomorrow would be another chance to dismantle the skeptic's facade. Samuel sensed it was the prelude to a deeper conflict, a confrontation not just with Mr. Landon but with the entire company's entrenched beliefs. The battle was ahead, and as he stepped into the fading light of day, he couldn't shake the feeling that the true challenge lay ahead, one where he would not merely advocate for change but fight for it. Samuel paced the floor of his apartment, the dim light casting long shadows that mirrored the uncertainty gnawing at him. The meeting with Mr. Landon loomed over him like a storm cloud, threatening to pour doubt and disbelief over everything he had worked tirelessly to build. As he replayed the conversation in his mind, each detail gnawed at his resolve. Mr. Landon's skepticism burned in Samuel's memory, igniting an unsettling mix of defiance and dread. How could someone so entrenched in tradition understand his vision, a vision anchored in innovation and emotional resonance? He dropped onto the couch, notebook still open on his lap, blank pages pooling with restless energy. Ideas swirled in his mind, disconnected fragments begging for cohesion. Nothing materialized until he recalled Zara's words, the essence of storytelling. Samuel needed to weave those strands together, to create a narrative that not only projected a plan but also painted a larger picture that could resonate with the team's collective heart. He transitioned from disarray to determination, his pen growing bolder as he began outlining his narrative. Why had previous strategies failed? The data showed impressive numbers, yet they lacked a beating heart. That was his angle. Samuel would center his presentation on engaging the audience, allowing them to feel the pulse of transformation behind the numbers. Samuel found himself writing faster. Each word poured onto the page like an awakening of purpose. He sketched his outline section by section. There would be stories of companies that had ventured beyond conventional frameworks, narratives rich with human experiences. They had faced skepticism and emerged not just successful but profoundly changed. He imagined their journeys interwoven with his own, making the obstacles tangible, relatable, but then he hit a wall. It was one thing to tell the story, it was another to stand in front of the room, bearing his soul and his idea, waiting for acceptance or rejection. What right did he have to challenge the status quo? Anxiety tugged at him, a familiar companion that whispered of failure. Samuel set the notebook aside and took a deep breath, pacing again, this time focusing on the rhythm of his thoughts. What if they couldn't see the truth behind the strategy? He murmured to himself, grappling with the fear that had held him captive for so long. He had been playing it safe for too long, waiting for his moment with bated breath. The realization hit him he had to break free of that hesitation that he recalled another lesson from his past: success was born from vulnerability. He needed to expose the fear behind his vision, revealing not just what he thought would work but why it mattered. Samuel would share his personal connection to the initiative, weaving in the passion that fueled him. Fueled by that new conviction, he returned to his desk. He wrote again, this time crafting passages that articulated not solely the benefits of each strategy but the emotional impact they could have on the company culture. If Mr. Landon, with all of his reservations, could see that passion reflected in the numbers, the rift between them might just close. As he delved deeper into composing this intertwined narrative, his fingers began to feel the weight of his own experiences, the late nights, the doubts. They infused his prose with authenticity, creating a bridge of trust that invited his colleagues to step across into his vision. With the clock ticking into the early hours of the morning, a mixture of excitement and fear pulsated within him. Could this fragile yet robust narrative shatter the chains of tradition that held the company back? He shook his head, battling the self-doubt that tried to creep back in. Tomorrow would be a test not only of his ideas but of his resolve. The time had come to face Mr. Landon and the rest of the team, to present not just facts but a vision born of both analytics and heart. Samuel sensed the stakes had radically shifted. This was no longer just about unveiling a proposal but about re-examining the very fabric of how they worked. As dawn began to break, Samuel stood before the mirror, steeling himself with a firm resolve. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, yet he couldn't afford to give in to fear. He wouldn't simply advocate, he would embody his message. But as the light crept into his space, a chilling thought sparked. What if, despite all his efforts, change remained a distant dream? Would the fight he was willing to wage be worth it? With those questions echoing at the forefront of his mind, Samuel prepared to step into the unknown, ready to face whatever came next. Samuel stood on the edge of transformation, no longer encapsulated by the luxuries his empire afforded him. The boardroom felt different today, charged with a blend of hope and uncertainty. The air was thick with anticipation as he prepared to present his vision for a community initiative, one that had the potential to bridge the gap between corporate profit and social impact. Today was his moment, the culmination of weeks of introspection and drive. He stepped into the conference room, his heart steady and focused. Pushing aside the memories of skepticism he had faced, he opened with vigor, "Thank you all for gathering today. We're at a juncture where our growth is not just measured in profits, but in our impact on the communities we serve." His colleagues' eyes flickered with caution, yet curiosity bubbled beneath the surface. Samuel commenced by weaving a narrative. He revisited his encounters with Zara, the brave girl whose vibrant dreams inched closer every day despite crushing obstacles. He eloquently shared stories of companies that had turned a profit while fostering authentic community relationships, illustrating how social responsibility could catalyze engagement within their workforce. He watched the faces around the room evolve, empathy sparking curiosity in some and skepticism in others. "We can be industry leaders," he asserted, "not only for what we achieve financially but for how we transform lives. By advocating for initiatives supporting families with disabled children, we truly redefine our legacy." A moment passed. Samuel remained resolute. It was Mr. Landon who broke the silence, his voice unmistakably layered with skepticism yet oddly softened. "Samuel, you present a noble cause, but how do we integrate this vision into our bottom line without derailing our current strategies?" The question hung heavily in the air, but Samuel was ready. "By conducting measured pilot programs, tracking their success meticulously, we can quantify the benefits to our brand: higher employee retention, more community support, and a positive public image that translates to profits." The tension in the room shifted, fingers shifted from skepticism to contemplation. As the discussion unfolded, Samuel realized just how far he had come. He was no longer a man shackled by privilege but a leader who understood the nuances of human connection within business. Each question posed sharpened his resolve, inviting vulnerability instead of retreat. He spoke not just of figures and returns but of shared values that elevated their corporate identity. By the end of the meeting, a pulse of anticipation radiated through the boardroom. Samuel feared opening himself to criticism, but instead, he had opened up an avenue for dialogue. His proposal began gaining traction. Executives leaned forward in their chairs, sharing ideas on how this initiative could work within their operational framework. The tide was shifting, moving from hesitation into active engagement. As he concluded, the air buzzed with potential. This could be the legacy we leave behind, Samuel reiterated, his voice steadied by the growing energy in the room. After the meeting adjourned, Samuel found himself surrounded by the buzz of conversation, discussions ignited by his vision. It was a stark contrast to the isolation he once felt, overwhelmed by the burdens of his wealth and expectations. Recognition emerged from unexpected places. One of his colleagues approached him, eyes lit with enthusiasm. "You really made us rethink our direction, Samuel. Let us set a meeting next week to continue this discussion." He left the boardroom, satisfaction coursing through him. He hadn't just argued for a cause, he had demonstrated how change could rise from personal understanding and corporate responsibility. Samuel had conquered the fear that once paralyzed him and taken a decisive step toward redefining success, not through wealth alone but through making a tangible difference. That he felt ready to meet Zara again, to share that today had been just the beginning. Her ambition and perseverance fueled his own transformation, grounding his understanding of what true success could become. Together, they would advocate for change, fostering paths others could follow. Samuel realized that through taking authentic risks, he had aligned his values with his vision, carving a clear path ahead. He was now not just an architect of technology but a bastion for hope, moving toward a legacy that resonated deeply on both personal and professional levels. The time had arrived for individual growth to intertwine with lasting impact both for himself and for others. Samuel had not only achieved clarity in his purpose but had firmly established his competence as a force for good in the world of business. Now was the moment to take action. You need to subscribe now to our channel to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that fuel your heart and mind. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support matters. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below, we want to hear from you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, bridging stories of growth and hope.